Welcome, everyone, to this session that we're doing here at Renew Europe in the European Parliament. It's called Value Talks, and the idea here is that we're going to get to know the leaders better, but also their political vision and what they think will be crucial when it comes to discussion about the future of Europe, which this year, after this pandemic, which has changed so many things for everyone, I'm sure will be a key subject. And in today's session, I'm happy to say that we're joined by two special guests. We're joined by Estonia's Prime Minister, and let's just hope she can hear us and she's connected. Good morning, Prime Minister. Yes, and we're also joined here in the studio by Dacian Cioloș, who is the president of Renew Europe. Very nice to see you.
Hello, welcome. Welcome, you too.
Thanks so much. And there's a lot of, there's a lot to get through. We have 45 minutes. There will be questions from me, of course, put to, of course, the Prime Minister and Mr. Cioloș. There will also be questions from the audience. This is a very special audience because it's young Europeans that want to be engaged and that have questions about Europe. And also, if you have questions that you want to put on social media, you can put them, and I will try my best to put them to our guests. Now, the first question, of course, will focus on digital and digitalization. But before we do that, I want to throw to a video that we have that looks at the efforts that Estonia is doing to modernize and digitalize its economy further. Let's take a look.
We're in Estonia and its capital, Tallinn, an EU member state of 1.3 million inhabitants located on the Baltic Sea. This republic, which regained its independence in 1991, is governed since last January by Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, who leads a liberal and centrist coalition. Leader of the European Reform Party, Kaja Kallas is far from unknown in Brussels. Member of the European Parliament from 2014 to 2018, she drew plaudits with a report proposing ambitious reforms for the European digital single market. Who better to talk about digital issues than an Estonian? Estonia, a trailblazer in technology, is indeed the most digitalized country in Europe. People have been voting digitally for several years now, and 99% of public services are digitized. It's estimated that this digital society saves the country 2% of its GDP every year. Here, each citizen has an e-identity card to carry out most administrative formalities in a fast and secure way. It doesn't take more than a few minutes to fill in a tax return. Healthcare is one of the aspects of daily life where Estonians can witness the benefit of digital technology. No more paperwork. Each citizen has a digital medical file containing all the information about their medical history. It's therefore not surprising that Estonia, before all the other European countries, in the next few days will have the digital COVID-19 certificate accessible by a simple QR code. Public transport is an area where startups are launching new groundbreaking technologies. As an example, for 2 years the first autonomous bus line has been seasonally tested in Tallinn. This project, carried out in cooperation with the Tallinn University of Technology, involves several local companies. Estonia has created a real business and innovation-friendly environment. It's no coincidence that unicorns such as Taxify, now known as Bolt, and Wise were created by Estonians. It's also no coincidence that Skype peer-to-peer technology was developed by Estonian programmers. This technological effervescence can be experienced on a daily basis in different areas of Tallinn. In Ülemiste City Business Park, which houses the innovation hub e-Estonia, or in the old industrial district of Telliskivi, which gathers more than 250 startups. Welcome to e-Estonia, a blueprint for other European countries.
Digital Estonia, where a tax return takes 3 minutes to fill up. I know that that will be useful, and it would be certainly useful for me, that's for sure. But before we get into the details, I did want to ask you, of course, Mr. Cioloș, you're the lead and the president of the Renew Group. I know that you have a keen interest in the sessions that we're doing. What's the goal of Value Talks? What are you hoping that the audience takes away from this?
Yeah, in fact, you know, I used to say that Renew Europe group is the most pro-European one. And by our name and by our principles of constitutions, we want to renew Europe, to modernize Europe, and we use this opportunity of the conference on the future of Europe to talk to the people about us, who we are, what we want, which are our values, but to connect this on very concrete subjects. So we have several prominent Renew Europe leaders, Kaja Kallas as a Prime Minister, and we have other 6 heads of state and government from the Renew Europe family, Charles Michel, President of European Council, commissioners, and our objective as a political group in the Parliament is to invite these personalities from the Renew Europe family to discuss about subject on the table at the European level, but explaining on the meantime our view, our vision about how to modernize Europe. So this is the first value talks, and I started with Kaja Kallas, who is the youngest Prime Minister that we have in our political family, but with a very good knowledge about European affairs, because she was member of this political group in the European Parliament. We will continue after that with our colleagues, commissioners, and other head of states on government till next year over these debates about the future of Europe.
And the Conference of Europe, which is so important for you,
it's very important because this is the way to modernize Europe, is to listen to citizens, but also to reconnect the politics with citizens and interests of citizens. And what we will try to do today is to see very concretely how some member states already have experience to share with others and what we can do maybe better at European level.
And to the Prime Minister, before we head into the details, and there's a lot to talk about today, I was hoping I could just follow up on that question. You know, what do you hope comes out of the conference for the future of Europe? What's your goal?
Well, it's first of all, thank you for having me, and I also think it's very crucial that we have this kind of conversations, especially with the young people, because they are the future. And when we make decisions now, we actually make them for the future. So it's very important that young people take part in this. And what is also important is to understand how culturally diverse we are in different parts of Europe. I mean, we have so much to learn from each other. And very often we just don't know what kind of good practices there are in other member states and what could be an example for others. So we are a small member state, but we are good in one thing, which is digital. But there are bigger member states that are better in some other issues that are also important for the whole of Europe. And therefore, sharing these kind of experiences and having these discussions to show how diverse the region is, how many good ideas we have here, I think it's a very good thing.
And, you know, just to pick up on that point, you know, you say we're a small member state, but if there's something that European summits have shown, is that there are no small member states to some extent.
Yeah, and like the saying goes that in Europe, all the states are small. Some of them just don't know it yet.
And you know, you mentioned, of course, technology and how your country is trying to pioneer in so many different ways. I wonder, when you look at the bigger European legislation, and I'm thinking everything from the Digital Markets Act to the artificial intelligence, how important is it to get it right and to some extent to be able to compete with the big ones on a global scale? Because there's this idea that perhaps at times Europe has been on the back foot when it comes to technology.
Yes, we have to understand where it comes from. I think, you know, we have 27 different member states and 27 sets of different rules. So even if we agree on the ideas that we should have, you know, one set of rules when we talk about digital single market, because the internet does not know any borders. But then we come down to details, which are regulations. And then everybody feels that, no, you know, my regulations are the best. And so, you know, let's have these, you know, set of rules, but I can still keep mine. And I think this is a wrong way to address this, because then we end up with 27 +1 rules, which are the European rules plus everybody else. So in order to move forward, I think we must also overcome this, that the national is always the best. What we have done here. I mean, I'm open to many ideas that come also from other parts of Europe, because they are more developed in some spheres. Of course, we are all bound with the internal politics in our member states, but we should see the bigger picture, because the bigger picture is the fight for global power. And Europe, in terms of geography or in terms of a region, is a small region, and there's a clear competition between US or China, for that matter, and the values we share or don't share.
And Prime Minister, when you look at the news this week, and this feeds very much into the idea of Europe becoming more sovereign, and to some extent that may also mean different regulations. There's been allegations that perhaps some member states in Europe may have been spied on. Is this perhaps another incentive to take hold of this regulation as a way to enforce perhaps that own European identity and Europe's own sovereignty?
Yes, we of course can't tell about this case in detail right now, but I mean in general, this digital sovereignty, that Europe is strong on our own. I think this is something that we should have a goal to reach. So that we are technologically strong, we are digitally strong. We also have the functioning single market that makes all of us stronger. I think this is for the benefit of our companies, but also for the benefit for our citizens.
And I wonder if you have a follow-up comment on that, the idea that Europe may need its own set of rules to reinforce its own sovereignty to some extent, and a lot of that is now being fought on the digital space.
Yeah, first of all, when we talk about industrial autonomy and in this framework digital autonomy, we need to reinforce some digital sectors in the European Union. We have a common market, so it's obvious that we also have to have common rules. We have seen during this pandemic of COVID how complicated it is when there are no coordination among member states. But as Kaja Kallas said, when we compare European Union to China or to United States, we are small. We are very small, and we have to, when we will invest now, because our intention is to invest in digital. I just remember that Renew Europe Group obtained in negotiations with the Council to have 20% of the recovery and resilience fund to be invested in digital. So it's important to do this investment not only to solve some national problems, digitalization of public administration, to launch the innovation in this sector, but also to have a European approach. So if we will invest, we also need to have rules. And to have rules in order to protect the interests of our citizens. And we have this objective, what is illegal in the real world should be also illegal in the digital world, to protect the interests of citizens, but also to create the opportunity to invest in order to develop and to speed up the development of this sector, and this should be done at European level.
Right, and it's interesting, the both of you had said regulation, but also innovation and developing industries. So I wonder, and Minister Kallas, I'm really curious to put this question to you. Can you do a new set of regulations, but also help the economy, modernize it, invest in it? Can the two go together?
Very good question. Just a small comment on what Mr. Cioloș said about this, sovereignty. I think what we have to keep in mind that we don't build anything that could be protectionism in disguise. Because, if we try to be stronger by keeping others out, then I don't think we're stronger. We are just smaller. Being liberal at heart, this is very important that we are open. And also being liberal, for me, the belief in all solving regulations is also very weak, meaning that we do this regulation and then everything is solved. This is not the case. I mean, we have to have initiatives. We have to have motivation to invest in Europe and to show what we are good at. Just strengthening what we are strong at, and maybe not trying to overcome our weaknesses and make our strengths something that we build upon. And this is, I mean, when we talk about technology, then we have different spheres where different member states have very different and strong industries. What we have to see is that we don't out-regulate them, in a sense that we want to do good, but then we make the rules that actually are fit for the incumbents that are from outside Europe and not fit for everybody else, which is actually detrimental to the single market here. So the balance is, I mean, very how to say, fragile.
And the other, go ahead.
Yeah, just to complete what Kaja Kallas said, we need to invest in modernize our economy and digitalize our economy, but we also have to invest in the competence of the citizens. Mm-hmm. Because if we will speed up the process of development of our economy and even public services without having the competence, then we have to risk we risk to have a societal problem. So Renew Europe Group think that we have to use this money on RRF, on Recovery and Resilience Fund, to modernize our economy, but also to increase the competence of the citizens, the simple citizens, not only the trained people that we need for this sector.
And I'm happy that you brought up citizens, because it's a perfect segue to what was my next question, which really has to do with a lot of the disinformation that we've seen, a lot of the fake news, especially in the pandemic. At the start of it, we saw a lot, then we saw more on the vaccination campaign, information that was simply fake but spreads very quickly. How can Europe combat that?
So first of all, we have to be aware about this risk. And I said that because not every time the people measure how important and how big is this problem at European level. Secondly, this problem cannot be solved at national level. So we have to address this issue at European level. And we have to have regulations on that, but also we have to have tools for cyber, in terms of cyber security, to protect ourselves.
With hacking and so on. And Prime Minister, of course, you're running an election, you're an elected official too. How much do you worry that this impacting or could potentially impact elections more in the future? How can you combat that so that there's a fair and free election?
Well, a very wide subject, but I would first come back to this comment. I think during this pandemic, we actually fought two pandemics. One was the health part of it, but the other part was infodemic. I mean, the fight with all the fake news that comes in relation to the pandemic or in relation to the vaccinations. So this was quite similar in all the countries. And that we have to address. The other part is also all the cyber threats that you pointed out. I mean, cybersecurity, I mean, no country is really safe, meaning that cyber security events, cyber threats will not happen. We know that, this event that happened in Belgium, we know this event that happened recently in Ireland, and not to mention also what has happened in US. So what we can do about this is to, first of all, I mean, share the information. with different countries, because sometimes, different companies, different countries are a bit ashamed that they were attacked and maybe don't share their experiences, while the bad guys, if I can put it this way, definitely share information. So if we don't learn from the events that have occurred, we actually can't build on that and can't be more resilient on that as well. So one point that was brought up was the citizens and also educating the citizens, meaning that they recognize events of fake news, also of cyber threats that are there, but it's very difficult to do in practice because I bring this example. We had this study that we did regarding people's digital skills, and I'm sure this is the same about cyber skills in general. The question was that how well you really feel in this, how competent you feel. And the people who said that they don't know much and actually they feel really weak in this answered the question whether they want more training or more education. No. So actually, how do you really help the people who don't want to be helped in a sense, and they are all part of this bigger picture. So this is I think a very good question that we have to ponder.
And before we put the questions from our audience that we have, and I'm sure they have many questions, I did want to put a question myself about the vaccination. We have talked about the vaccination campaign in Europe. It's now really quickly speeding up and going fast. Would you say, Prime Minister, and then I will also put the question to you, that ultimately the European approach has been proven right, that your strategy has been validated to do it together?
Absolutely. Coming from a small member state, I say that doing this thing together is the right way, because for a small country like we are 1.3 million people, we couldn't get the vaccines otherwise. And we have an example from some years ago when there was this swine flu, and the big pharmaceutical companies said to us that you are too small amount, we don't really provide you with the vaccines because we can't really do this. And then we had to beg another member state, the bigger one, that if you take the vaccines, take some for us as well. But this time, we went into this together, and I think we are stronger together. Of course, the start was bumpy, and regarding AstraZeneca, it's bumpy for all over the world. But generally, I think it is a good approach, and I'm glad that Europe took this way to do this together.
And Mr. Cioloș, was it a good idea now? At the beginning, very criticized, but now proven right? What do you say?
Not only a good idea, but I think that looking now what's happened in this last year, we should be convinced that no one member state alone would be able to manage this pandemic. So as a Romanian, as a European, I am convinced that this was a very good example that even if the health sector is a national competence, we need also to develop a European health approach and European health policy, especially in order to deal with pandemics. And of course, a vaccination campaign, the fact that we invest at European level for the research, because the European Union finance a lot the research in order to speed up the production of vaccine, the creation of this vaccine. Then when we look on the production capacity, some member states have the capacities to produce vaccine, but not all the member states. And the fact that we dealt commonly at European level, we managed to share these vaccines to all the member states, and we also are able to help other partners outside of European Union. And I want to underline, European Union up to now is the only region in the world investing also in vaccines for others, not only for European Unions. It's not the case, unfortunately, with the US, China, and Russia. They use these vaccines, but for political influence purposes. But European Union use this capacity to produce vaccines also for the others. And I hope that heads of state and government, together with the parliament, will be able to decide also on European health policy in order to avoid in the future lack of coordination as it was the case at the beginning of the pandemics in Europe.
And it's true that the industrial scale-up in March and April was incredibly big. The way that Europe was able to join with pharma companies and also at times push for partnerships between them. And it was a really fast industrial scale-up. I mean, in numbers we hadn't seen before. And before on my side, I think we're good because we have some guests that want to join us and I want to allow them to ask a question. And we have on the line Starin Reynisson, who's 25 years old. He is joining from Iceland and he has a question for the Prime Minister. Let's see if he can hear us.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Good to see you.
Good.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the good discussion. So, for the past year, many people have been working and studying from home due to the ongoing pandemic, effectively proving that in many cases teleworking is a viable alternative to traditional workplace or school studies. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we can incorporate digital solutions into regional policy, especially in regard to work and education, to create new and exciting opportunities in declining areas, and what lessons we can take from the use of digital solutions during the pandemic in that regard. And also, if I may ask a more personal question, because you have in your political career, Prime Minister, broken several glass ceilings in Estonian domestic politics, and I would like to hear what achievement you are proudest of in that regard. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the questions. A very wide question. I think what we see here, when we had the pandemic and everybody went off to their homes to work, what we saw was also this regional, that people went to their summer houses and the real estate market for summer houses went up, which meant that people want to stay in the nature, in the regions, but the biggest problem was the network. So if you don't have the internet working well, you can't work from home, you can't study from home, and this is the main obstacle. So what we did, we put huge money to all the places to build up this strong network, stronger connections throughout Estonia. Of course, we are small, but this fast internet is basis for everything. So what we see and what we see now is that people don't want to return to the offices. We also see that we are making these reforms here that all the state officials, we don't need the office space anymore because they work from home and they're glad to do this. They're more free in this and they're more like judges of their time or owners of their own time. So this is definitely something. What we also learned, and we are gathering the lessons right now regarding the education. I think of all the countries, we were the most prepared to have digital schools. So when it first happened last spring, children went home and actually our e-school worked just well. But we also saw that it doesn't suit everybody still, being totally digital. And we have to have, this kind of safeguards for people that it doesn't work so well for. But we are gathering the lessons now, and I can't still say the definite answers, what kind of policies we need in this regard. But I'm very much hoping that we are using this opportunity to make the big reforms regarding how we work. I mean, the laws and regulations are coming from those times when people actually work with one employer throughout their life. It's not the way people work anymore, and the laws should also reflect on that. So there are many such ways, and I think that we should use this crisis to really build upon the change in this regard. About your other question, the glass ceilings have broken, and what is the biggest achievement? Well, very hard to say. I mean, I think if I succeed as a prime minister, which is very difficult considering that we have the health crisis and we also have big hole in our budget, so it means very many unpopular decisions. So if despite all of this I succeed, then I guess that this is the biggest achievement, because there are so many reforms that we want to do on the way. But of course, people are not that open to change, even if they are open in words, but then in deeds, in details, it's always a bit difficult. So I hope that the biggest achievements still are lying ahead.
Well, Prime Minister, thank you. And thank you also to Starin for putting the question over in Iceland. And, we have another guest who's joining us, also a member of the young public, but very well informed. Her name is Ramona Goga. She's 27. She's from Romania, your home country. And she participates in a youth organization that's called Generația Plus. And Ramona, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Hello, everyone. And thank you very much for having us today. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Renew Europe group for this amazing idea of engaging with citizens and civil society, and obviously for being open to the questions of the youth organizations as well. As you know, today we celebrate the International Children's Day, and my intervention will be mainly related to the future of a constantly changing world. A world where digitalization and new technologies are the engine of these changes, and these changes seem to happen overnight mostly. The digital transition is an EU priority, and an important component of it is the yearly digital education, even from primary school, as shown by the European Commission's Digital Education Action Plan. But unfortunately, in many EU countries, mine included, digital education is more than a rarity in primary school. Many children do not have the chance to develop even the basic skills until they reach the high school. So on the other hand, we know that Estonia is much more advanced in this regard, and they set an example for the whole Europe. In this context, I would like to ask the Prime Minister Kallas, what are, just in a nutshell, the good practices to keep in mind or the pitfalls to avoid from Estonia's experience? And in the meantime, President Cioloș, I have a question for you as well. Can the EU make a real progress on digital transition while having only limited competencies in the field of education? Thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to your answers. Mulțumesc.
Yes, thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you for the questions. First of all, I think all the children around the world are addicted to screens. So this is, I think, common everywhere. The question is what they do with these screens and how much they are prepared to use the screens in a way that makes them smarter. So therefore, our focus is very much on the STEM subjects, and also, robotics and such, thinking that we already start in kindergarten. And also what you have to do is to make it really playful for the children. And therefore, we have different items here, but just one thing that I want to point out, the children want to be like their heroes. And so the question is, who are their heroes? For Estonian children, this book that is most common and most popular, there are cartoons, is a dog that is also a girl dog that is an inventor. So we have musicals and all the songs that talk about math is great, you know, physics is interesting, you know, chemistry brings you this and that, to make, you know, this kind of STEM subjects really fascinating for the kids. So you can build on that when they already go to school. You know, it's not like, oh, I don't want to, you know, math is the worst subject that there is, I want to do something easier. But no, math is actually fun. And all the IT skills, when we talk about you know, programming, are based on these subjects. So if they're strong already there, if they're interested in that, then, you know, it moves on from there. Because I think even, you know, in all the member states, still children use the screens in their phones, at least, if they don't use the computers in a way that they should, but to make them do you know, useful things in their screens, first of all.
She referred to Ramona spoke about Romania, said she wants it to be more advanced. How can you, or how should it mean?
First of all, I would like to say, in our world, in the current world, the children are almost born with an iPhone, or anyway with a tablet in their hands. So I think what we have to do is to encourage member states, because they have competence in education, to adapt also the content of the pedagogical skills and of the educational programs. And as we mentioned previously, to invest in the infrastructure. Because if we invest in digital infrastructure, we can connect to this modernization rural areas and even the most remote areas. When we talk about teleworking, a good digital infrastructure can be helpful for the women, for example, to work at home and to take care on their children, but could be also very useful to modernize the education in even the most remote areas. And what we can do at European level, even if we don't have competence in education, we can connect member states to exchange best practices. And just to give the example of Erasmus program, which has really impacted a lot the education system in European Union, even if doesn't intervene directly in the content of the education. But what we can do is to put people in a network, educational system in a network, and to invest in infrastructure. Because if we will invest in digital infrastructure, and if we will properly use this 20% of digital investment, and also the reforms that the Commission will ask to the member states in the RRF, in recovery and resilience national strategic plans, then we can evolve a lot in the next 5-10 years at European level, also in this field of education.
Right. So also give the structure to moms and dads too, so they can also help
because
their kids.
By naturally, they are already connected to this all these digital items. But what we have to do is also to prepare the teachers and to put to the children, the disposal of the children, the infrastructure that they need, in order not to create these disadvantages between several regions or member states in Europe.
And we have another final question. This time we're going to France, and we have Maxime, who is 23, and he is also a participant in a youth organization that's called Les Jamans. So Maxime, bonjour,
yes,
and
yes.
The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. Dear President Cioloș and dear Mrs. Prime Minister Kallas, I'm honored to express myself in the name of Les Jeunes avec Macron at the occasion of this meeting. The world and our society evolve permanently, and the role of politicians is to support these transformations. They also have to organize these changes in order to make them efficient in society and to reassure citizens who can be afraid by this change. In France, notably, we have to digitalize our public services and our administration again and again. Estonia, being really in advance in this topic, I would like to ask you what are the key steps to succeed the digitalization of public services in a state? And more specifically, how to accompany citizens in this transformation when private data protection is a topic very emerging in the public debate. And finally, I would like to ask a question more personal to Mrs. Prime Minister Kallas. As a young European leader, how to defend European values among young people in the face of the rise of extremes? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very many questions. First of all, how to digitize public services and make people take them up. I mean, what we did in the first place was exactly this, that you can't really put the services, or make the services digital, but you also have to make motivation for the people to take up the services digitally. So what we did as a first step, I mean, we created the digital ID, but also created the services that they can use it for. And of course, why they should use it. Of course, what motivates people is money. And therefore we started with taxes. So if you completed your tax declaration online, then you also got your money back in 3 days, I mean, your tax returns. And that was a motivator for the people to do it really fast and really take this up. So for other public services as well, we have tried to see this from the perspective of the customer. So what you want is to move fast. And coming to this day, of course, it becomes more easy day by day. And it's more like, why aren't we digital already in some aspects? Because people are living their lives online. So we are even saying they're living their own lives. And this means that also the country, the state has to be where the people are. So if the people are there, the country has to be there as well. Otherwise, you alienate from your people. They don't understand, I can do everything digitally, and with the country or the state, I have to go to, I don't know, an office and talk to somebody. So this is something that we have done. Now, coming to your question about the data protection, I think the fundamental principle that we have here is that data, I'm the owner of my data. So I get to say who gets to see my data and who I don't allow this to. So I can go online and see who has looked at my data. And of course, first, when we started with this, there was this curiosity by all the, people that were having access to these databases to check on the neighbor and all these things. But it really ended really fast because, digitally there's a mark who has seen your data or used your data. And therefore all these people got punished, and it's not happening anymore because everybody knows that you can't do this. So I think if you keep this in mind, that the data's, I'm the owner of my data, so I get to say this, who sees and what they see. Regarding your last question about the European values, I think I always try to print this picture of the whole world. I mean, if you compare our region with some other regions, what are the values that we stand for? It's the rule of law, it's democracy, it's also human rights, and human rights that we are really strong here in Europe. So if we don't stand for human rights, then nobody really does globally. And these are the things that are good here. Also, the cultural diversity. I mean, coming from a small country with 1.3 million people, it's like practically a suburb of Paris. But it's a country. So for us, this keeping the cultural diversity, the languages, learning from others' history is very important, and it's also the strength and the value that we have here. So, in a nutshell, I would say like this.
And thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you, Maxime, for putting the question. On that note, there's a question from social media. If I could just put this to the Prime Minister too, that says Roman Protasevich, who's been arrested in Belarus for a week now. What can the European Union do to make sure he returns home safely?
This is a very good question and very difficult question at the same time. What the European Council did in the summit we had last Monday, I mean, Roman Protasevich was taken hostage on Sunday, and already on Monday, the European Council decided on the sanctions. And strong sanctions on the state-owned enterprises, but also the companies, the Belarusian air company, and all this list of sanctions, we have to go on with them and really enforce them so that all the member states really put the pressure on Belarus, because we don't have much other tools, but these sanctions really work, but we can't lose the patience here. I understand that we don't have a lot of time, but that's why it's very important to keep the strong pressure on Belarusian leader is maybe a wrong way, but Lukashenko, so that he will return this decision, because Belarus has taken up this step only because he didn't think that the reactions will be that strong. And we have to show that the reactions are strong, and we don't let him get away with this.
Yeah. And of course, as a journalist, I can only say that journalists should be able to work and operate freely in a real democracy. And we're getting to the end of our session, so I want to leave with closing remarks, but I want to get to those closing remarks with a question that I'm sure Mir put themselves, and this is about the Conference of the Future of Europe. At the beginning, criticized as perhaps being too soft, too bland, is not going to lead to anything. But what do you think can be achieved?
For our group, for Renew Europe group, it's important, first of all, that this conference is for citizens and with citizens, because as politicians, as European institutions, we have a lot of opportunities and frameworks to discuss among us and to take decisions. But now this conference should put in touch politicians with citizens, and we have to really hear citizens. So this is why for us it's important that these panels deliver some ideas how to improve some priorities that we know should be priorities for European level, for European Union, the green agenda, digital agenda, democratization, rule of law, and so on. But we can have ideas from citizens. It's important also to have no taboo, to discuss about all the subjects and to have the courage to put on the table all sensitive subjects, including the decisional process, because we just told about decision in Belarus. Hopefully this time the Council was very quick, but usually not every time European Union is faster and with a very clear decision and with capacity to enforce this decision. So we have to discuss about that, because if we are not strong from this point of view of capacity to decide and to enforce, the others use these weaknesses of European Union. And we have to take conclusions and to deliver results. And so this conference is important to be in touch with citizens, to have no taboo, and the conclusions to be really enforced. And I'm really confident under the French presidency, Emmanuel Macron, it's from our political family. I am very confident that in the first semester of next year, when we'll have the first conclusions of this conference, The French presidency will put on the table, together with the Commission, legislative proposals in order to be able to improve, why not even the European electoral system for the next 2024 elections.
And Prime Minister, just very quickly, since we're getting to the end of our event today, what meaningful progress do you hope can be obtained from this conference?
Well, first of all, I think we have to listen to the people every day. And in small member states, maybe it's more easier because you're closer to people than in bigger ones. But I think the value that we get out of this could be the collective knowledge of what is really important for the citizens of Europe, what stress, what is the subjects that need to be addressed more deeply, and then we can rule on that. We can listen and take this into account.
Well, thanks so much for that. And we have reached the end of this session of Value Talks. Of course, I also want to thank the young members of the audience that put out those well thought out questions and that want to participate in this young democracy. So that's good. And thank you to the Prime Minister for taking the time. Thank you also to Mr. Cioloș for taking the time here in the studio. Prime Minister, we hope to see you in person very soon. And for everyone else that's watching, thank you so much. And make sure to tune in to our future sessions here at Value Talks with the leadership of Renew Europe. Thanks for joining us.